sometimes, thank you for that. So there's that recording. Sometimes you'll shift in response to a falling market. Other times you'll shift to take your business to the next level. And either way, it's going to transform your business and life. You can change your thinking, your focus, your actions, and ultimately your results to get back in the game and ahead of the competition. So the tactics that jumpstart your business in tough times will power it forward in the good times. Right. And there's that page and shift where it talks about taking market share. If you keep market share, you keep your deals the same as the market kind of drops, and then it takes off again, and you're going to keep that same market share, but your business is going to go up. And we were just talking a second ago, a few of us were mentioning how this shift is going to be very, very different than 2008 to 2010. And I'm excited to talk about that. And so let's get into it. Okay. So first, Gene, I'd actually like to start with you. With what you learned by going through what we'll call the big shift, right, back in 2008, and growing your business 100% each year from 2008 to 2012, what advice would you share with us today on how to thrive in a trying market?
So I would say, as you did, I took Bold in 2009 also, right? And so that was the first time that I actually learned to lead generate. I always thought I was lead generating before when I was showing up to the office, checking emails, making some calls, responding to stuff. But I was never purposeful in making those contacts. And so, three things happened at the same time that allowed us to grow our business like that through the shift. And that was, one was taking Bold and making those 100 contacts a week. And it was just, making a contact sport at that point. Second was I went to weekly coaching. So I had accountability every week versus before I was doing every 2 weeks. And that I could BS myself with a coach pretty well if I meet with them every 2 weeks about what happened or didn't happen or can't quite remember or whatever. But weekly was really hard to get away from the accountability of what I needed to do to grow. And then third was I hired an administrative assistant who had D. I had never had D in that position before. And so she was on my coaching calls, and she locked me in the room, and she did not let me out, and she didn't let me bullshit. And if I did, she told my coach, and he found ways to make sure that I got back on track. So those three things together just allowed me to have enough conversations, increase my skill set and mindset in a way that allowed me to grow the business through a shifting time.
Now, I appreciate that conciseness, Gene, of those three things that you said. And I'm going to run through those real quick for everybody. You hired an admin who had D. Now, D is that drive, right? A lot of us think of an admin as on the DISC personality as an SC, somebody who's a supporter, more detail oriented, but you had somebody that was a driver that was going to keep you in shape, whip you into shape and say, Gene, what are you doing? You need to be in this coaching call. You need to be lead generating, because I would assume that they would have known that their livelihood depended upon you being in that seat, right?
Absolutely.
So
that's where she actually came. She came from another agent who wasn't making the shift, was very concerned about being able to keep her on.
Oh, wow.
And so, it was definitely top of mind for her.
And that's an interesting, that's some of the things that we've been talking about in our coaching calls, is that the opportunity this presents right now, not only from a recruiting standpoint, right? Agents, we know agents out there that haven't done much business this year because, they can't get a buyer under contract. And of course that's changing. Yet from an admin standpoint, right? That there are businesses out there that have talented admins that might be seeing the same thing that yours did at that time. Now, the other thing you did is you upped coaching, which is interesting because in a shift, right, especially 2008, the sky was falling. It could have been a very scary time for those of us that might have known better. However, you actually, increased your spend on coaching and upped it to every week because you knew you couldn't hide. You knew at the end of the day, what I heard you say is that it was going to benefit you and it was going to bring a return on that. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, we all have our own natural willpower and our ceilings that we get through or don't get through. And then we also have our own self-sabotage. And so that you don't even know is there. And so my coach, it was Tony DeCello at that time. He was really able to pick out my self-sabotage talk and going, and he would not let me go there. And I didn't even know it. But then I could look back and see the patterns, and I'm like,
oh yeah.
Yep. I'm definitely limiting myself by the way I'm thinking and why I'm justifying things.
Yeah, that's awesome. he helped you be more self-aware, and that's something Gary's been talking about in his top agent group about being self-aware and that space between your reaction and stimulus. It's like, hey, there's something going on here. Let me be aware of the talk that's happening in my head. And then the last thing you said is 100 contacts a week. Quickly, I'm just curious, like how hard was that to go from what you were doing before, which is entrepreneurial lead generation, to purposeful lead generation? I don't know how many contacts you were doing before, probably nowhere near that, to 100. Like, what was
Maybe
that
100
like?
a week.
What shifted in your head to get to that level?
So again, he made me commit to 1 hour lead generation a day, 1 hour, just 1 hour, just do this. And then he got me to an hour and a half. And then he got me to 2 hours. And then he got me to 2.5 hours. And he got to me to 3 hours. And so, and by the way, 2 hours was really good for me. 2.5 sucked. 3 was horrible in my performance. And so I found that I could be really, really effective in 2 hours of solid, just nailing it with conversations with people. Everybody's different. And so anyway, it was, he did, I just did just throw it in there, go start doing this. It was, I trained my brain, trained myself, trained my confidence to grow, into a longer time frame.
What you did is you built a habit.
Yeah.
Right. So you didn't set yourself up to fail. You like, what can I do? Right. And let me turn the dimmer up on that so that I don't, all of a sudden, like a lot of people do, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to go 7 days a week for 2 hours a day. And then they're there for a day or two and then they fail, and they slough off. But what I heard you say is that you started with something, built that confidence and step at a time. It's like, all right, I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more once you got that under your belt. Which is brilliant because that's, whether it's the one thing or James Clear Atomic Habits, that's how you build a habit, right? We don't determine our futures, we determine our habits, and then our habits determine our futures. And most of us, especially if you read James Clear, he talks about, do whatever it is, you can do on your worst day, start there and then ramp it up, which I think is fantastic. Anything else you want to add to that before I move on to Mary Ellen?
I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing that. Mary Ellen, you mentioned that during 2007, 2008, you were doubling down on lead generation to find the motivated. However, what did you do to motivate yourself to do this?
So motivation, I mean, all goes back to the energy plan, right? We get up and we do our activities in the morning. We get everything done. We're up. We're out and about. Like now, since 2020, I've been on the Pivot Shift call every single morning, which is an awesome call that motivates you. James Shaw motivates you. It's incredible. So just getting your mindset intact and doubling down. So like I was contacting 40 people a day. I had to find the motivated and I had to find those people. Most of my business is referral business. It's sphere of influence and agent to agent referral. And when the market shifted, that wasn't there as much. So I had to go find the motivated. So I had to find the people that needed my assistance and needed my help.
Okay. And so what, I'm sure every day wasn't like you woke up and you're like, woohoo, I get to go do this. This is wonderful. This is awesome. Right. What drove you on those days when you got out of bed and it wasn't the best day and you're like, I don't know. Like, what was it that really helped you to stay in the zone with that? Was
Your
it just
big why? I mean, my
okay.
big why, what I want to do with my life, how I want to build wealth for other people, how I'm compassionate about doing that. So deep down was like, if I don't do this, I wake up every morning. We're all unemployed every morning. We know that, right? We've got to find business every single day. So I was just motivated to find that one piece of business today. And that's what I'm doing now in the market now.
Okay. So permit me to be a coach and dig on this for a second. A lot of folks have, they might kind of know what their big why is. And even if they know it, there's that ability to connect our head to our heart and make sure that it actually turns into emotion. Logic makes us think, emotion makes us act, right? So how did you keep that emotion tied to that big why during those hard times? Do you have a vision board? Was there a saying? Like, how did you keep it front and center and keep your heart in it?
So I always had a vision board. Every year I had a vision board. And in those days we had the cardboard one with all the stuff on it. So I always had my vision board there and what was driving me to to make the money to fund the perfect life, to lead that life by design, is what I looked at every day. And, you know, really just waking up and seeing my family was what was really important to me at that time.
Mm, mm. So you kept the vision board, you kept that visual in front of you. You know, I would assume that it was either in one place where you would lead generate or something like that. And would you have any advice to those folks that are like, yeah, I'm struggling to keep in touch with my big why? Like, what advice would you give them to make sure that their heart stays in it?
So for me, it's, you know, exercising your mind and your body. So every morning I would be up running and exercising, starting my day off, whether it's journaling or whatever makes you happy. And I would always motivate my mornings with running. I ran Division I track in college, and I played soccer. So for me, exercise is really important. So getting up earlier in the morning, even if it was a half an hour earlier, to just get my stress out of that,
Yeah.
and just get my mind in the right point.
You bring up, I'm so glad you said that. You bring up such an incredibly important point. And, you know, obviously Gary writes about it. It's in the MREA, you know, the energy plan. A lot of us tend to forget about that. And as we head towards, you know, I know some markets are already deep in a shift. Some are starting to see it. And the point that you bring up is taking care of ourselves, our health and our body, right? Emotion creates emotion. So, you know, for those of us listening, like, how is that? How is your energy plan? How are you doing with exercise? How are you doing with nutrition? You know, don't call it a diet, because we all have a diet. It's nutrition, right? How are we doing with sleep? How are we doing with mindfulness, right? And those practices that we have, because like you said, Mary Ellen, like, that's essential. Like, if we don't have those things every day to make sure that we're keeping those things strong, you know, oh my gosh, you're gonna be playing behind the eight ball, and it's gonna be a lot more difficult for you to nail that. Would anybody else like to share, basically, to add on to what Gene and Mary Ellen have said?
Rock solid advice.
Thanks, John.
I would
Anybody?
go ahead.
I like to go deep.
There you go. I love it. Who else?
I will say, I'll jump in here because I was a new agent. I'm Kristen Smith. I'm from Albany,
Hey,
Oregon.
Kristen.
And you probably have never heard of Albany, Oregon. It's located about an hour and a half or so south of Portland. But I was a brand new agent. I got my license in April of 2007. And so when Olivia asked, you know, who did this, who's interested, I was like, sure. I'm hoping that I can speak to some of the people who are newer and they don't know, because when I started, I had to really dip into the hustle. I mean, I had to reach out to who I knew and who knew me. And there was a lot of praying going on, let me tell you. And so the hustle technology, one of the things I made it as soon as I was financially able to make it happen. I definitely plugged into all the KW things. I think Mega Camp was the very first corporate event I went to, and that, I think it was either 8 or 9, best event ever. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so valuable. So plugging into those kinds of things were the thing that I needed to get me amped, to encourage me, because it's so easy to get discouraged in a shift, if you, especially when you're new. I remember, to this day, I remember sitting on the floor in my cubicle in our little office and being in tears because I had sellers angry at me. I had paperwork on the floor for all these files, and I was new enough that I didn't have it together. And one of the other agents that had been around came beside me, and she gave me some encouragement, and she's like, why don't you let me do your transaction coordinating for you? And I'm like, that's a thing. So starting and getting somebody to help you with the things that you're not so great at, that took that pressure of, what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I make this successful? It didn't help with the calling the sellers and saying, hey, Mr. Seller, I am glad to reach out to you today. I have nothing new to tell you. But those were the important calls, though. And even though I didn't do them as often as I should have as a young agent, because they were hard, they were so critical. Because if you can keep your sellers informed or your clients informed, if it's buyers, just let them know you don't have anything to tell them, because all they want to know is that they're still alive and that you're still thinking about them. So my top 3 things were the hustle, going to bold. Mitch was one of my bold coaches, and technology, just really digging into technology. And I remember taking everything Ben Kinney taught, and
Oh, no.
We lose her. All
Lost
right.
her.
We lost
Just
her.
froze
Yeah.
up.
So here, let me, Mitch, Mitch, I see your hand raised. Hold on a second. Let me just ask this by a raise of hands. How many of us in this panel were not amazing and didn't like kill it our first year? Can anybody else identify with that? Yeah. And I just want to point that out, because sometimes we can put people on stage or on a panel like this and we think they come out of the womb amazing and they sell 100 homes a year. And it's like, that's not the case, guys. And I love that when I'm in front of folks, I'm like, just understand, like, there were bills I didn't pay the first couple of years, right? Before I took bold, that was the truth. So understand there's a process to this, and we don't just nail it right out of the bat. So Mitch, what were you going to say?
Just a slightly different perspective, as Kristen was brand new or relatively new into the business when she was going through the shift. I'd been in the business already 23 years at that point. So I had terrible habits. I mean, horrid. I'd hired a coach, Joe Bogar, who really changed the way I looked at things. And then I took bold. And I took bold because I knew Diana was the queen of scripts. And what I got was really my life back. Actually, the scripts were great. Getting my life back was more important. And I say that because what she did is she taught me that I really had to start looking at the market differently. And with the shift coming, my bad habits were not going to get me through the shift. My bad habits, all the things I'd done up to that point, we've heard Gary say that, right? What got us here today is certainly not going to get us there tomorrow, right? And so it was that at that moment. So I had to truly look at things differently and say, how was I going to reinvent myself to find the motivated sellers? Because I'm not a real big fan of working with buyers. So I had to find the motivated sellers. And at that point for me it was short sales. So I immediately had to become the master of short sales.
Well, and go ahead, Mitch. I'm
no, I was just going to say, it's just really figuring out who you choose to be, start pursuing that, and then use all the tools that we have at our disposal to become that for you. One of them being bold. I mean, I know I'm very self-serving being a bold coach, yet I believe very strongly in that program. And I just took it again as an agent, believe it or not, in addition to coaching it. It's that good of a thing. But I think we also need to take advantage of the other resources we had, which are the agents that we have in our company who are capable and willing to share. Coaching, without a doubt, has got to be on everybody's list. Everybody's list. I don't care if you're starting at the productivity coaching level, because that's where your production says, and then you move all the way up into mastery and then executive. You need to do that. And then our events. And it's powerful, the tools we have, and using those things is going to make the biggest difference.
Well, Mitch, you said something really important. You mentioned the word be, right? There's a bold law around that, be, do, achieve.
Correct.
Right? And a lot of us think that we've got to achieve first. I mean, that's kind of what some of the goals and things that we might set. And like Gene had said, he built up his habits, right? We don't just all of a sudden do 3 hours of lead generation right off the bat necessarily. If we can, great. Some of us need to build up to it. We need to be the type of person that will do 3 hours of lead generation, then we can achieve that. And so, I know that idea of who do you see yourself as? Who are you being? And, Mary Ellen had mentioned, going to certain things like Bold, like Mega Camp. I know when I first went to Mega Camp in 2009, it just blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not real different than these folks on stage, and so that's something really important, is having those coaching relationships, having a coach, but also making sure you're plugging into the opportunities that are around you. And Mitch, I know that you coach a lot of top agents week after week across the U.S. What would be your advice or insight into the mindset aspect of things? Like when you talk about who we need to be, we talked about mindfulness and exercise and things like that. What advice or input would you have for folks listening about that aspect of the shift and going into it?
Okay, so the aspect of the mindset part, I think it's about first off, the company you keep.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a part of it, right? Who do you hang out with? And I've heard more than one people, Gary, Ben Kinney, Jay, saying, we're going to become the average of the 5 people we hang out with the most. And I've read that in multiple books. I think that's 100% true. That's why your parents did not want you hanging out with certain children when you were younger, because they knew what that would bring. It's no different than when you're an adult, right? So company you keep. And then what are you putting into that brain of yours? It's a sponge. And even at let's just be clear, I'm going to be 58 years old in October. I'm older than probably just about anybody on this panel, except for maybe Gene. I'm not as old as Gene.
Pat.
No, just kidding. At the same time, they say,
brother.
they say old dogs can't learn new tricks. What they don't say is old dogs can't learn new tricks unless they really want to. And if you choose to do so, you can unlearn the stuff that you learned and then relearn or newly learn things that you want. So the mind that is growing is the one that's going to be satisfied. And that's the one that's going to give you the mindset that's going to want you to keep on going. Amen. Diana Kokoska is the most voracious learner I know. And she reads 2 or 3 books a week. And why does she do that? Because the continual learning creates the desire to continue to learn. And it keeps going and going and going. And that's the mindset that we need to have. What is the number one thing in our 6 personal perspectives? Does anybody know?
The first one is self-mastery.
Yeah. That's right, self-mastery. It's not about mastery a skill. It's not about mastery a thing. It's mastery of oneself. Who do you choose to be the best person you need to be? And it can start as quickly or as long as you want it to be, and it can start as short as reading 5 pages a day. That's it. Doesn't take much. And so the people in bold who I see have the greatest mindsets are the ones that accept the fact that 1, they can't know it all. 2, they need to be in a pursuit of mastery of themselves. And they do everything they can to remain in that pursuit, which continues to grow their mindset.
There you go. Thank you, Mitch. I really appreciate that. And don't forget, your brain is a muscle. So when you use it that way, right, it's going to get stronger and stronger. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. So make sure that you're using that. So Erica, I'm coming to you next. I know that, both you and I have stepped out of production in our teams. And the question I want to ask you specifically is, do you see that changing through this shift, or how will you lean into your team during this time?
Well, so I'm actually the team leader, so I don't plan on getting back into production other than helping my agents. But what I have looked at is the numbers on our multi-year trends. And though we are growing and though we have a lot of cappers, of course, the people that are going to need the most assistance is our new agents. And by the way, I had an incredibly insightful and powerful meeting yesterday with 30 of the top 36 people in my market center. And only 3 of them have been through a shift. And so many of them have no idea how to hold an open house, what a great communication plan looks like with their sellers, what it's like to ask for the price reduction in advance.
What's a price reduction?
I was like, right. I was like, oh my gosh, I am so excited because I've actually been doing this since 1991. And I joke my motivation is that I was a single mom with 2 kids and I needed to put myself through college. And so I was going to do any and all the things necessary to make sure that I could pay the bills. And when I graduated, I was like, I just made way more in real estate than I'll ever make with my nursing degree. And 31 years later, I'm still selling real estate. So no, I don't plan on getting back into production, but we don't have a productivity coach per se right now. But what we do have is only 1 of 2 bolds in the entire eastern side of the United States. So we're definitely bringing bold in because that's going to be so important to do that. Yes. I have such incredible stories around bold and what it has done for people's lives. And so it was a little nerve-wracking because, it's hard to get people in a room live today. So we went ahead and we're going live. But I think that there's nothing new under the sun, and it's the basics, right?
Yeah.
And if you haven't learned the basics yet, then you need to learn the basics. And the basics are lead gen, lead follow-up, go on appointments, get contracts to close, and understand your business, right? And if you can do those things every single day and you have a calendar that matches it, then you'll succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, I hear the big why, and I love the big why. I have a big why, no question. And I've known it since I was 9, so I'm lucky. And for me, it's like, this is the career I chose. So I had a really difficult conversation with someone who was very dear to me when the pandemic hit, and they went into this like freeze mode, right? Like if any of you have ever seen that adorable video of Rango, which is one of my favorite cartoons, and there's this like lizard on there that like freezes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's going on? Right. And they're like, I don't know what to do to help people. And I'm like, okay, you've always been helpful before, but let me help you understand you need to pay your bills. So if you don't make calls to get closings, then your wife is going to sell her car next month. Not you sell your truck. Your wife is going to sell her car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All the business happened like in that moment. Like you can't pay your bills. Now, the reality is that the wife's car was paid for and I was the wife. So my husband got right back into production and did just fine. That's the only coaching meeting we've ever had in our entire relationship. But the basics still work. And if our people don't know what the basics are, if you don't know what the basics are, then great news. You're at the company that wrote the book on them.
That's right. There you go. There you go. That's awesome. Okay. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. So, Steve, what's been Gary telling the top agents these days?
Oh my gosh, how much time do you have?
We've got what is it, 30 minutes? So yeah, go there.
Actually, I do have to be somewhere at noon. It's funny. I was 24 years at Coldwell Banker, and I'm 10 years now, or maybe it was 25, about 35 years in the business, but about 10 or 11 years here at KW. And ever since I got here, Gary's been talking about a shift, which is crazy because if I get up every morning and say California is going to have an earthquake, eventually I'll look like Nostradamus. But it turns out Gary has now been eventually right. He certainly is encouraging people to trim unnecessary fat and scale back. I've kind of gone the other direction. In addition to our director of operations, we now have an ISA. We're taking on some interns. We're kind of leveling up. We want to make sure we hang on to at least our market share, if not increase it, because I know I got in the business in 1988. By 1990 or 91, I was selling REOs. So I did about 250 or 300 in that cycle. And I did another almost 300 or 350 REOs in the last cycle. So this will be my third cycle, if indeed that's what the direction we are truly going. And it tends to look that way. But, Gary's talking about trimming and scaling back, and maybe that's a good idea. I'm not doing it. I'm digging down on making sure I'm updated with all my REO contacts. I've do a lot of probate and administration of wills and trusts. I actually just did a little, there's no way on this blur background to get these books to show, but I have a little booklet I'm mailing out to attorneys to get more estate sale work. As I like to say, people are dying to work with us. Anyway, Gary's, just telling people to hunker down is the short answer. The long answer I gave you is the short answer is, hunker down and get rid of any unnecessary baggage financially.
Well, and it's interesting that you share those things, hunkering down, especially when it comes to our expenses. A lot of agents may not even know exactly what they're spending. All right. So first, understand what you're spending. Like if you don't have a P&L, start tracking that and understand.
Got to know your numbers.
That's right. What are you spending? And from there, it's a matter of understanding, what's bringing a return, what might need to be negotiated, what do you need to cut? But you also don't want to cut. I know he's had Keith Cunningham on some of those conversations a few times. You don't want to cut to the bone. You want to cut the fat and be purposeful about it. And anything that is bringing a return that's feeding your business, especially when you look at the MREA model, it should be bringing a 9 to 10 to 1 return, give or take. If it's below a 6 to 1 return, depending on how big your team is, your business is, you may need to consider cutting it. But understand the return you're getting on what you're spending. Every lead gen expense, every expense you have as an employee that should be bringing a return. If it's not, you need to start thinking about changing it or letting it go to industry, so to speak. And so, would anybody else? I'm just curious what anybody else would say as far as either what they've heard Gary say or how they're preparing their business for this shift.
Chris, I can tell you something on this.
Yeah, John.
As I listen to these great, I mean,
Please.
it's just really super good stuff. So I remember back in the day, the Great Recession, whatever, short sales, foreclosures, all that stuff. And then it was kind of flat. We're in a vacation market, investment place. But what I would tell people is, and I tell my new people this is, you're almost incredibly lucky to be walking into a market that's as hard as it is when you're new. All right. Because you're mostly young, you're mostly hungry, and you mostly have the capabilities to work hard. Right. You got the time and capabilities most likely. And because there's a lot of agents been around that are fat and happy that'll fall off. There's a lot of agents that are out there that are undercapitalized that will fall off. And if you take this as an opportunity for what it is, the upside can be huge. The rest of your career can be made over these next 12, 24 months. I mean, if you look at this right, if you focus on listings and figure out how to show up every day and outwork everybody else, you're set. You can spend these next 12 to 24 months to create a career. Simple as that. This is an unbelievable opportunity.
So this was said earlier by Mitch, and I didn't expand on that, which is consistency. That consistency is really, really important. Time on task over time will beat out anything, start and stop any day of the week. And so it's really important to make sure that you jump into that. Now, I did see a couple of hands raised. I'm actually going to go to Pat first because she raised her physical hand and hasn't spoken yet. So Pat, what do you got for us? Then I'll go to Erica.
Okay, I'm an old broad that's done this for many decades, been through a ridiculous number of shifts. The one thing I learned back in the dark ages with Coldwell Banker was the head of relocation came in. Learn how to price homes. In other words, you've got to price them based on the competition is a buyer going to look at, not what the house next door is priced at. And so look at bigger. That was big help. Kristen Cole's statement, keep the sellers happy until something happens. And that can be by calling them on a weekly basis. We had a combination and a statement we made to all of our sellers that bottom line is we're going to talk to you once a week and let you know what's going on. We also, the absorption rate, learn what that is and what the numbers are in your market. And so those are the big things that I would tell newer agents to learn to do.
Thank you, Pat. Pricing your home, pricing the home is really important, and not looking at things, look at things through the buyer's eyes, understanding what they're seeing and how they're seeing it, right?
Is a buyer not going to look? If it's all in one big school system, what is available and price it underneath that.
That's right. All right, we've got a bunch of hands raised. So Erica, I'm going to go to you next, and then we're going to go to Mitch and then Kristen.
Well, I loved what you said about understanding your finances. And again, I'm actually very not money motivated. So I love being able to make enough money that I don't have to be. Maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it, but I'll bring in an agent, whether they're new or whether they're experienced, and I'll say, okay, I need to see your home budget. And 8 out of 10 times they don't have one. So we're going to start there. Like we actually pay $300 a month, and we have Dave Ramsey who provides his website to all of our agents. And it's not something I'm willing to cut, right? But I am willing to cut. I'll even reuse my paper plate twice. I like to refer to myself as high class, cheap ass. Like I don't spend money, and neither does the market center. It better have a 9-to-1 return. So I'll say, okay, well, let's get your budget in place, right? Like, and let's be realistic about a budget. And I'm very good with budgets. So I can be like, okay, where's the cable bill? When do you guys eat out? Where's your coffee in here, right? Like, let's get real. right? With numbers. And then I'm like, let's look at your business and let's make sure there's a return on investment. And then we just do what we basically do. I don't remember it's the financial model where I just back in, like, how much money do you have to make to pay your bills so that you don't have to go get a job somewhere else next year. It's 9 homes, great. It might be 19 homes, great. This is what you have to do. And then we just back them into the simplicity of how many calls do you have to make to go on this many appointments to get this many closings. And we have a system and model for it. We don't have to make it fancy, and you give them clarity, and then they know every single day. And then you put them in a group, or you get them on a call, you stick them out in the bullpen, and you're like, okay, how many appointments do you have to go on to hit your goals this week so you can pay your bills, right? Sometimes I'll bring in like McDonald's and say, who's going to be working here next week? Right? Like, in all love, like, do you want to make your calls or do you want to flip a burger for me? Like, which one do you want? Because they actually pay pretty well. It's like $20 an hour and you're making less than that. So you don't actually get the right to keep this job unless you make more than minimum wage. And this is what it looks like. And then we're like, what would it look like at the end of the year if you were happy that you kept this job? And if it was 9 to pay your bills, it's probably 25 to, you know, plan the vacation. And we'll put up there, like, what do you want? How much money do you want to give? Do you want to take the family on a vacation? Are you saving for a new car? Like, what would be like the reward? Because I'm very motivated in like risk reward. That's where I get motivated. I don't like to clean my house. So if I'm going to clean my house, it's going to be for 30 minutes at a time, and I'm going to get a 30-minute break, right? I don't like the lead gen. Okay, well then I'm going to do it for 45 minutes and then I'm going to take a break. For me, it's results oriented. So I always say you get to stop lead generating when you've made 2 appointments. And if that takes you all day, then I'll see you for lunch, right? But get them a plan of action, like, and then also provide the scripts necessary. And that's what a lot of people are asking for me right now is like, what are the scripts? What are the talking points? What are the conversations that we need to have? And that is a skill base. But I love one of the things that my husband talked about on lead gen shift tactic number 3. I was expecting something profound because we actually don't talk much about business. And he was like, the only profound thing I do is I get up every day and I do it. He's like, that's it. He's like, sometimes I get off the phone and I'm like, boy, I sounded like an idiot, but I made the call, right? And it's like, you know, the old adage, like, you got a talented kid who throws 10 free throws every single week. And then you've got someone who has no skill at all and they're practicing 5 hours a day. The end of the year, one of them is going to be better, and we all know who it is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Erica. I love that consistency. Create a plan for action. Don't stop lead generating until you get 2 appointments. All right, got a few more questions I actually want to get to before the end of today. And Mitch and Kristen, you guys have raised your hands, so you guys go ahead. And then I'm going to hear. We're going to go to Aaron, Valerie, and Megan for another question. But you guys go first.
I was just going to bring up that we're all talking wonderful things about what we've done or what have you. Maybe it'd be a good idea to share some of the places where we screwed the pooch, where we made mistakes. I mean, frankly, my making the mistake was not really creating a database that was worth a darn, meaning I didn't have really great relationships and was not staying in touch. Had I done that at the times when I was doing 250, 300 transactions, how much more business would we have gotten? And then there's plenty that I did stay in touch with. I mean, we just listed a house that we'd been in touch with a person for a year and sold one we were in touch with who bought our listing, stayed in touch with him, and he sold it again with us. There's great things that you could say you did well, yet where do you make mistakes? I made a lot of mistakes by not being in great relationship with the people in my database. And that's the simplest things to do. The simplest, easiest relationship to continue to build. So I would say, if anything, don't learn from my mistake. Don't do what I did.
So build a database and communicate it with it consistently, right?
Yeah. And we have all the tools for it. Command is a beauty.
Yes, we do. Yes, it is. All right,
Amen.
Kristen, you're up.
Amen. Say it again.
Command is a beauty.
I'm right with you, Erica, on being frugal. And I didn't see any reason to pay for something that KW provides for free. So I was all into eEdge and Command and everything when Mitch knows, he's been my bold coach, he knows. And, but one I want to piggyback on the relationships. That is what I'm building. That is what I'm working on and focusing on this shift. And I'm super excited because this next Tuesday, I'm having my summer client event. And I went out because I couldn't find one of these to rent. I bought a soft serve ice cream machine, and I am giving out ice cream cones at my client event. But the whole point of it is I then want to be able to go to clients events that are their own and pull ice cream for them and tell them that this, because you use me, this is a benefit. If get the ice cream mix and stuff, I'll come and I'll do ice cream for you for an hour. Just find something. I'd like to think out of the box. Find something that meets you and your strengths. Picking up the phone for I'm with Eric or Gene, excuse me. I can't, it's painful to be hours and hours and hours, but I'd have a ball being able to pull ice cream and people know, hey, you're a real estate broker. What are they going to do? They're going to stand there and they're waiting for their ice cream cone, whether the ice cream is freezing or it's just their turn. So
that's cool. I appreciate you sharing that. So I'm going to go to Aaron, Megan, and Valerie. And here's the question I want to hear from you guys. And then if there's anything else that you've been dying to share with us, I would love to hear from you. But I've heard Gary ask, is it about having a great year in real estate or a great career? And, what advice can you share with us on how to ensure we focus on the long term and a great career instead of just the pressure of one great year? So let's go with Valerie first, and we'll go Megan, then Aaron. We'll wrap up on that question with you.
Okay. Well, a great year doesn't make for a great career. I'm 14 years in. I started in 2008, and I was very blessed to have been picked up as a buyer's agent by one of the top REO guys in town. So, right out of the gate, first year, I sold 14 houses without doing anything. And once I realized I needed to do something, I wasn't at Keller yet. So I hired a Buffini coach. And what I tell all the mentees in my office is, I don't know, I like food with my meals, and that's what drives me, and I got in trouble actually after I came to Keller because I didn't have the REO leads anymore, and then ended up with no leads. And I had to go back and rebuild those relationships that I had. And as it turns out, I got in the business. I came from the title insurance business. I did have a Buffini coach, but I took Bold with Mitch. And I and I believe I was one of your conversions. And that's when I got my MAPS coach. And I've had MAPS coaching ever since, which, I'm like Gene, I can BS a coach with the best of them. It's like, don't ask somebody that bullshits to not bullshit, because that's what we do. However, I finally got a coach that wouldn't buy my nonsense. And one of my big things was that the business came so easily. All I have to do is call a couple of people, and I don't even need to ask for a business. That's the thing. I can actually just call and say, hey, Mitch, how you doing? I was thinking about you. I'm heading your way. Or, tomorrow you got time to grab coffee or a beer or something like that, and they go, no, I'm really busy. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll call you next time I'm in the area, but I'm really thinking about your business has been really good. I'm heading your way. I got a couple of houses coming on or whatever, and I just, and that's where I pick them up, but the thing is, it's like, you never know when you're going to be caught flat footed. In my case, it wasn't 2008, it was 2011. And I almost lost my house in 2011. I was 5 months behind. And I just, I told myself that there's a lot of people out there that could sell a house that don't have the skill I have. And I just need to put my head down and going back to what we were talking about earlier, do the basics very well. And I got that from Bill Parcells in the 1990 New York Giants. And of course, Phil Simms went down, and their backup quarterback won the Super Bowl. And they asked him how they did it. And they said they did the basics very well. And I always remember that. It's just go back to the basics and do it very well. And like Mary Ellen, I have a deep sports background, and I hold a whole bunch of powerlifting records. And I do not do a personal best every time I go in the gym, but I go in the gym 5 times a week, every week, no matter what. And sometimes, the bar wins and sometimes I win, depending on what we're supposed to be doing that. But time over task has made me a world champion. So time over task in real estate is the exact same thing. It makes you a champion. So it's a matter of doing those basics very well, repeatedly.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you just said that, Valerie. Thank you for sharing that. I love what you said. Time on task will make you a world champion. Pin that, put that somewhere, because that's going to that's it. I can leave now. Time on task will make you a world champion. So now Megan or Aaron, I'm not sure how you follow that up, but Megan, I think you wanted to share a few things and then we'll go to Aaron.
Hi, sure. I know it'll be wrapping up shortly, and I really just wanted to kind of say, I work with Olivia on a daily basis, and my experience in the real estate world has just been within the last year, and the amount of knowledge and just growing that I have learned in the last year has been great. And it's just been kind of finding my direction, but watching her coach people and watching her and the clients and just what she brings to people and the changes that are made. I just wanted to make sure before this call ended, just to say how appreciative of this call and these experiences and this knowledge, and just being able to learn more and staying. Before this call, we were kind of having a conversation and with someone, and it was just, that reminder to, no matter what level you get to stay teachable. And that has stuck with me this whole time, like going through this whole call. And it's just all, that reminder to always stay teachable. And I watch a lot of you don't necessarily say it, but you don't have to. It's remaining open-minded and always being teachable. But I just wanted to say on this call how appreciative, and I was very excited to get on here and kind of watch this happen and watch everybody just kind of put their ideas and their perspective and their thoughts together.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, Megan, and you're helping facilitate this. And watching Olivia do her thing and seeing how important coachability is. And Valerie had also shared finding a coach that won't let you BS, right? And so making sure that you have that partner, because at MAPS, that's what we are. We're your business partner to make sure that we don't let you BS yourself out of success and to fight for your best version of yourself. And so Aaron, as a MAPS coach, how would you answer that question I said earlier about making sure that you have a great career, not just a great year? And, maybe you can speak to, that need for a coach and what people do to take that next step to find a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only am I a coach, but I also am a practitioner. I mean, I own a level 6 real estate team that over the past 4 years I've built from the ground up. And this year we're on pace for over 100 million in sales volume in 5 different locations. And the way we've done this, you guys, is truly by having a relationship with our numbers. And one of the best things of advice that I was given early on is to build a relationship with something or someone, you have to spend time with it. Gary recently said love is spelled T-I-M-E. And there's a lot of truth to that. If you're going to choose to avoid spending time with your data, whether it's financials or your metrics, you're not going to have a relationship with them that's long lasting. One of the things that's super important to track and measure is, like everybody has said, the number of conversations you're choosing to have each day. Those contacts, this is a contact sport. If you want to sell real estate and not talk to people, you're out of your mind. It just does not work very well. I don't know any mega producers that don't do it. Our organization, year to date, 6,401 conversations, which has identified 358 opportunity appointments into our business. And we've closed and pended 118 houses. Okay. Understand, are we proud of the conversion metrics? Some days, right? And those numbers create the opportunities in which what we get to say, what could we do differently to get a better outcome or a different outcome? Though we understand that leading measure, if it's not being done, the odds of everything else showing up are slim to none, right? So we are hyper diligent and aware of what that daily action is being done. And I think that one of the best things of advice as agents walking into a shifting market, which is where I began 2008, same difference. I didn't know any different. It was the person, this is belly to belly, face to face, the person with the most contacts is going to always win this game. And so to set yourself up for a great career, go have as many contacts, business contacts, where you're asking an opportunity of, are you a buyer, seller, or investor right now? If the answer is no, who do you know that's looking to buy, sell, or invest right now? Okay. It's very simple. You can ask other ways, though you got to identify that. Or, hey, do you have a real estate agent that you refer to if you hear of people looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? If the answer is no, would you be offended if I became that guy and stayed in contact with you forever? Right? Like, it's not that difficult. Our database today is 28,000 strong, right? It's taken 14 years to build it up. It doesn't happen overnight. And consistently, you see growth in the business. Right?
I appreciate that, Aaron. Sorry, were you done?
Yep. And one last thing, actually, Chris.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that selling is not telling. And so many people get caught up with just blah, blah, blahing. Remember that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so when people are asking questions out touring properties or giving opinions on their properties or what they're looking to pursue, when they ask, tell me, what do you think about this? Just reverse it and ask a great question. Tell me what you think about it before I give you my opinion, right? What is it that you love about it? What is it that you don't love about it? Are these things that you could see yourself fixing? Stop just inserting your own judgment, which causes them to back off. Ask better questions.
Amen. Amen.
Hey,
All right.
Chris,
So
can I ask you a quick question for the whole
you sure
group?
can.
Because what you mentioned, Aaron, struck me as interesting. It don't happen overnight. Are we all in agreement on this? This is time on task over a long time. The longer, the better. You come into this, think your first week, your first month, your first year is going to be magic, maybe. But if you build a career and you will be fine, is what I would tell folks.
Amen. All right. We are almost out of time, and I want to hear from all y'all before we go, like really quickly. What is one thing you do on the daily that gives you the success that you're looking for, especially in light of the shift? And I know we've said go back to basics. We said know your numbers, get a coach, all that stuff. Maybe that's your answer. However, I would love to hear from everyone quickly. What is that one thing that you're doing right now that you know is going to give you the success you're looking for, despite any changes in a market?
I think the one thing that I focus on in my success is I choose the story I tell myself in my head. I don't ever let it tell me.
I choose the story. I choose my story. I love that. Thank you, Erica.
Start the day prior by establishing tomorrow's goals and commitments, right? So wake up knowing this is what I'm going to execute. And in our organization, for most people's goals to be met, it is 20 voice-to-voice conversations. So establish your commitment and run towards it the next day.
Love it. Who's next?
Mine is connecting with people and giving them education and value on the market and just really connecting and building that relationship. 40 contacts per day. We're doubling down now.
That's interesting. I love that. All right. Who's next?
I'll jump in there. We started this in COVID and we've continued it as a team. Every day we meet for 30 minutes and we share wins, and then we go into scripting for whatever any objections that came in the day prior. So we're looking, the buyer agents with the listing agents and the ISAs, everybody hears what's going on daily. Like, what was the response to this? Why did this deal fall apart? Why did you get an offer on that property? And so we script around that daily. I mean, it's the market's changing so fast. And so it's just keeping everybody on the team focused on how we can best help people by knowing what's happening on the buyer side of the business and what's happening on the seller side of the business.
Awesome. All right, who's next?
I'll jump in.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up. All right, let's go to somebody else. We're low on time. So Pat, why don't you go next?
Set a schedule and actually look at it and follow it.
What are we looking at and following again? Pat, say that one more time.
Our calendar and schedule.
Thank you. If it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist, right? All right, who's next?
I was going to say the same thing, following the recipe that you put onto your schedule. If you can commit to following the lead or the time blocks that you have in your schedule and without variation, everything else gets magical because all the time you thought you didn't have is going to show up at the end of the day.
Awesome. Kristen, we'll go to you, and then Steve will try you one more time. Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, I am one of the things I do is I have a meeting with my virtual assistant every single day where I am focusing on here's what's going on, and then communication. Communication is the key for me.
Awesome. All right, Steve.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool. I transitioned from Wi-Fi in the office to the car, which is not always smooth. I think, I will echo what everybody's been saying specific to conversations, right? This whole business is conversations. If you can't have conversations, you're not going to have business. It's that simple. But you've got to shift-proof the business. We've got to double down on, estate sales, divorce sales, REO, all the things that are going to continue to happen in our business, irrespective of what the market's doing, right? All that business keeps happening. So it's just a matter of getting back to basics, making the calls, having the conversations, but really focusing on sort of high volume business that doesn't go away, that's shift proof.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. All right. I don't think we heard from Valerie and then anybody else. Last call.
Actually, this is really simple and silly. And this is just a little above and beyond that I do. I make sure 7 days a week, I make birthday calls. I don't do Facebook. I don't do unless they're somebody I never talk to on the phone, because some of the millennials, they won't pick up the phone, so don't bother. But and they won't listen to your message, so just don't bother. But I make birthday calls 7 days a week to anybody that is in my database who had a birthday that day. I make sure I wish them a happy birthday.
Hey, that's wonderful. All right,
I'll give you one last one. Have a plan. Do not wing it.
There you go. All right. So I'll just throw this in there, guys. Here it is. Make sure that you're studying this book. Get in a book club. Look over it. Implement what you read here. It's been written. You don't need anything new. Thank you, Gene. Right? So make sure this is something you're looking into, whether your business or your market is in a shift right now or it's going to be in a shift. Look at those numbers for the market. Know that you know what's going on. There's been a ton of amazing information here, and I see Gene put his email in there. So if you guys want to email him, ask him questions, whatever it is, that's wonderful. I have a great deal of respect for all y'all's time. So we started on time, we're ending on time. Listen, go out and be your amazing selves, and remember, we can do the hard things. Get better at doing hard. That's one of the amazing things that if you do that, nothing's going to stop you, and it's not going to get easier. So just let's get better at doing hard. Thank you guys for being here. Wonderful to see everybody. Thank you for contributing, everybody on the panel. Goodbye and God bless. We'll see you guys later.
Go help somebody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.